This is awesome, guys. I've never been a part of something like this before, and I apologize, I'm so overdressed for this crowd. but I'm from Hawaii, I don't even have a Hawaiian shirt on. But I brought this hat in honor of Jim, and it says Aloha Exchange, and I thought it would dress down my outfit a little bit. You know, Aloha Exchange, definitely, you know, that's Jim. So I want to tell you a little bit about a condition I have, and this condition is, you know, Jim's responsible for it. And I want to mention it because I think there's probably a lot of people here that are tuning in that might have the same condition. And I'm going to compare it to a virus. You know, we have this COVID-19 virus, and I'm going to call this the Malden-14. But this is a good virus. This is not a bad virus. And I want to describe it. I'm going to take you to medical school with me. I'm going to describe it a way that I learned about infectious diseases. Okay, so this is my infectious disease class for all of you guys. So we would learn about a disease, where it came from, and how the virus or the disease would set up in a human, what are the signs and symptoms, and then how we would treat it. So I'm going to take you through that. So I call this Malden-14 because I met Jim in 2014. He was a patient of mine. And so this condition I have is from Jim, and I'm going to tell you how he set it up in me. And he's a really smart guy. I don't know if you know, but us doctors, we set up walls between us and you. Might not be evident to you guys, but some walls from doctors could be really thin and fragile. Mine are like the walls of Jericho. I'm an oncologist, and I set up some very thick, high walls. I don't want to get close to my patients, and I think Jim knew that. And so he would break me down, and how he did this is really funny. He'd come back to see me every 3 to 6 months, and sometimes Marilyn would be there, and sometimes not. And at the end of the visit, us doctors, you know what we do is we want to politely end the visit, right? So how do I do it? I go, well, Jim, it's great seeing you. We'll see you back in 3 months. And I look at him, and he'd sit there, smiling. He wouldn't budge. I'm like, okay, I got to go to phase 2. So what I would do is I'd be sitting on a stool, and I'd slide towards the door. Jim, it's great seeing you. You know, the nurse will get your appointment. I look at him. Now we're going to DEFCON 3. So what I would do then is I would start walking towards the door, and I'd grab the door handle. And Jim wouldn't move. So I'd open the door, and I'd be like, Jim, I got to go. I'm an hour behind. And he goes, Jeff, I want to pray with you. This is the very first visit that I had with him, and it shocked me. So he kept knocking down my walls, just kept chipping away. Once he had a little hole through that wall, one day he came in, and we had this prayer. And he said, you know what, Jeff, I think you should start praying with your patients. And that was like dropping a nuclear bomb on me, because my mom, for years, medical school, residency, fellowship, Jeff, pray with your patients. And no, Mom, you know, I don't want to force my spirituality on anybody, whatever. And Jim said that to me, and it really had an impact. Okay, so that's how this virus got started in me, the Malden-14. What are the signs and symptoms? And I want to mention this to you because I bet you, a lot of you might have some similar symptoms. And I think how a virus will manifest in a patient would be different from patient to patient. In me, it was prayer. And what's interesting is when I first started praying with patients, you know, because of Jim's urging, it was easy. It was new, it was fresh, and I would pray with patients. And as time went by, a voice would enter my head when I'm meeting with the patient, and this voice would say, you know, you really should pray with this patient. So I started embracing that. And what's funny is, over time, you know, the devil didn't really like that because I was embracing it. So then a second voice would start entering my head. Jeff, you're too busy, you're an hour behind. This patient looks mean. And I would fight against this urge to pray. Let me give you an example. So I had a patient named Thomas, and he came for his preoperative visit. And my prayer ministry that Jim is responsible for, I decided I'd pray with patients their last visit before their surgery. And so I walk into Tom's room, and he's sitting there, and in the corner is a woman. He goes, oh, this is my wife. why he said this, I don't know. He goes, she's a Superior Court judge in Santa Ana. And if you guys know as doctors, there's one type of patient or a person that scares us the most, it's a lawyer. Yeah. Right? Think about a judge, that's like exponentially worse. But the problem was that she wasn't like, oh, it's nice to meet you, I've heard a lot about you, whatever. She was sitting there, arms crossed, and you know, as doctors, we read nonverbal communication pretty well. And she's sizing me up, and she does not look happy. Anyway, we got to the point of the visit where I wanted to pray with him, so I said, hey Tom, would it be okay if I said a quick prayer with you? And what he said, he goes, ask my wife. So I look at her and I say, would it be okay if I pray with your husband before surgery? And she goes, you do whatever you want. So what do you think I did? So I'm gonna get to the end of that story in a second. So we know how Jim set up this problem in me, and we probably reached a lot of you the same way. What are the signs and symptoms? And by the way, in me it's prayer, it's going to be different with the other of you, but I think the common theme of this thing that Jim would do is it gets you to do good but uncomfortable things, right? So prayer was uncomfortable for you to do, but it was good, and it gets you to kind of take that uncomfortable step. So what do you do about what do you do about this thing? What did I do about this? Well, I could embrace it, which I did, luckily, but you can also ignore it. And you know, I'm standing here today not to say, guys, you know, do it for Jim. I mean, I think that's a good way to approach it, but I think more importantly, if you embrace it for yourself, it's going to perpetuate, you know, longer, I would think. And I'm praying this virus because it literally does go viral. So in preparation for today, I went back and looked at, well, how many patients have I prayed with? You know, how many, you know, because we started this in 2014, it's over 800 patients that I've prayed with. Among the, so what's cool, this is the viral part of it, is there's 5 doctors that are in that 800, and these doctors are praying with their patients too. And the really cool thing, and this just blows my mind, is when these patients come back to see me, whether it's 6 months later or 6 years later, they don't say, Dr. Yoshida, you know, thank you for helping treat my cancer. They never say that. They never say, you know, you did an amazing surgery. They don't say that. You know what they say? They say, I still remember that prayer you had with me. And I told my friends that you prayed with me. And now when patients come to see me, new patients, these are friends of friends, and they say, we're not here to see you because we think you're a good doctor, but because you prayed with us. It doesn't get any better than that. It takes the pressure off of me, right? And so, you know, you can look at that, you know, that going viral. And what was really cool is Jim would come back for his visits, and we would talk about some of these downstream stories of what he set up in me. And you know, what he would do is he'd sit there, and boy, would he really, really smile. But when I would tell him a story that would really excite him, he'd laugh. And when you look at Jim, you think of a ho, 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 Santa Claus laugh. But he had this kind of high-pitched cackle. I never did it that often, but when I would tell some stories, boy, he would just start laughing. So let me tell you the end of the story with Thomas's wife. So I actually did pray with them, and let me tell you, when I was sitting there trying to decide if I was going to do it, there's that voice inside me, pray, pray, pray. There's that other voice that says, get the hell out of that room. But, you know, what are the legal ramifications of praying with the patient? You know, like, so we did. So Thomas comes back after surgery, it's 6 weeks later, and he's perfect, you know, we're really happy, and he goes, you know, I want to tell you my wife said hello. I'm like, okay. And he goes, but, she goes, you are now her favorite doctor. Like, what do you mean by that? She goes, she was so impressed that you prayed with me that she's telling all of her judge friends that there's actually a doctor that prays with patients. Oh, no. So you go from somebody that was sizing me up and basically telling me I could do whatever I want to telling her judge friend. Now, going full circle, this last week I prayed with I operated on one of her colleagues, one of her judge colleagues. But this last story I want to tell you, it's very short, but this is the crowning jewel of this ministry that Jim set up in me. And it's kind of a sad story initially. So I go into a room to see a patient that I hadn't seen for quite a few years, and it was a woman. And I walk in the door, and her son's with her. And I go, I haven't seen you in a while, why are you back? She goes, well, this isn't for me. She goes, my son has a certain kind of insurance that he can't get in to see you. So I made an appointment for myself, but I brought my son. Like, all right, that's fine. So we get into it. And this guy has stage 4 renal cancer, and stage 4 renal cancer and the cancers that I treat, that's a death sentence. And so we were going through this, and I just had to see him, and I'm like, I'm so sorry, I don't have anything to offer you. Bingo, that voice. That's the only thing I could offer, and I prayed with them. And then they left my office. I referred him to a colleague up in Los Angeles. A year goes by, and I get a message from my office. So-and-so wants you to call her back. I didn't quite remember who it was. I called, she goes, this is so-and-so. I saw you, but I wanted to give you an update on my son. And I was like, this is what kind of happens with stage 4 renal cancer. Well, she goes, he's cured. And I have my own questions about healing and prayer, and that confirms me that it does happen. And I told Jim that story, and you can just imagine that high-pitched cackle. And so the point is that, for those of you who, Jim has left a peace with, whether it's to pray with others, to do good, whatever, embrace it, don't ignore it, because, your life will be very rewarding. And I will say this unequivocally, there's no part of my career that has been more powerful than Jim having me pray with patients. And I mean that truly. And I encourage you to embrace it, because your life will be much more blessed because of it. So, thank you very much.